everybody, my name is Rachel and today I'm going to be attempting to review a classic, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. The Count of Monte Cristo is a classic French adventure revenge novel. The plot is very famous. I think a lot of people know the basic sketch of what happens in the book, but I will attempt to do a kind of overview of how the story begins and what the setup of the story is. The main character of this book is Edmond Dantes. At the beginning of the book, he is a 19-year-old sailor. He's second or third in command of the Pharaon, a French trading ship, and on the way back from a journey, their captain falls ill with brain fever. They end up landing on the island of Elba, where Napoleon is in exile, and while there, Dantes is given a letter from Napoleon to somebody else. He doesn't know what the letter contains, he just says he'll deliver it. Their captain dies and they go home to the port of Marseille, and then he is made captain of the Pharaon by Morel, who likes Dantes, but this makes a man named Danglars, who should have been made captain, very jealous of Dantes. Dantes then goes home to visit his very beloved father, whom he has not seen for a couple of months, and while he's visiting his father, he runs into a man named Caderousse, who is their neighbor, and somehow he pisses off Caderousse by being generous, I think, and then Caderousse is jealous and upset with him. Then he goes off to visit his fiancée, Mercedes, who is a young Catalan woman. She is 17 years old. They've been waiting to get married. They don't expect to get married for another couple of years until Dantes has enough income to support a wife, but since he's just been made captain, he can now support her, and they are going to get married immediately. And this makes Mercedes' cousin, or a distant relative named Fernand, very jealous because he wants Mercedes. He does not want Dantes to marry her. Danglars, Caderousse, and Fernand get together and come up with this plot to frame Dantes for a crime he has not committed, to get rid of him so that they can have what he has. Danglars wants to be captain. Caderousse, who the hell knows what he wants? I can't remember what he wants. And of course Fernand wants Mercedes. During the pre-wedding banquet for Mercedes and Dantes, the police come and arrest Dantes as a Bonapartist sympathizer, and part of a plot to bring Napoleon back. Of course, Dantes has no idea what's going on. He has no idea what he's been arrested for, and they pretty much don't tell him. And he gets dropped off in front of this man named Villefort. He can pretty much tell that Dantes is innocent. He asks Dantes what happened, and Dantes very innocently and openly tells him everything that happened, including the fact that he has this letter on his person that he hasn't read and can't read. And he gives it to Villefort, who opens it, reads it, and discovers that it implicates Villefort's father in the plot. And Villefort, who doesn't want his own career to be jeopardized by this plot, he basically decides that even though Dantes is innocent of what's going on, he's going to bury Dantes so that the two of them, the only people who know the name of the person that this letter was addressed to, will never tell it to anybody. Villefort will never tell it to anybody, and Dantes is going to be in prison for the rest of his life. And that's what happens. Dantes gets taken off to the prison of Chateau d'If, and he spends the next 14 years there. While he is in prison, Dantes meets Abba Faria, who is not crazy. He seems crazy, but he's not actually crazy. And they do attempt to escape, but before they can, Abba Faria dies, but not before telling Dantes about the awesome, amazing, buried, lost treasure of the Spada family. Dantes doesn't really believe him, but he uses Faria's death in order to get out of prison. He escapes from prison. That was a very interesting escape scene. That was a lot of suspense right there. I didn't know how I was going to get out of that situation. And he finds the treasure, and then he goes from one page being just Edmond Dantes discovering treasure to a time jump of about 10 years where he is now the Count of Monte Cristo. He has bought the island, he has a title, he has lots of money and servants and slaves and lots of people who are indebted to him, and he has come back to France to start getting his revenge on the four men who ruined his life. My opinion of this book, it was a fascinating read. I was so glad that I decided to read it. I was glad that I wasn't put off by the length. And to be honest, after I've read it, I don't think it felt that long. And part of that is because I don't think there was nothing really superfluous in it. And I don't think that Dumas was really overly verbose. While this was a serialized novel in France, it didn't feel like it was padded. Nothing in it did not ultimately contribute to the rest of the story. So everything hung together really well. And the only other serialized writing I have read has been Dickens. And I don't like Dickens' writing style. I think that he is way too descriptive for me. Dickens is kind of what I've always thought that serialized writing was like, but Dumas is nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. Such interesting characters, interesting situation, and the evolution of all of this becomes really interesting. I was surprised that for a story that I thought was just going to be kind of pulpy fun, made me think so much about character development and, crime versus punishment kind of thing. Yeah. I did really enjoy this book. I would highly recommend it to other people who, especially if you've been thinking about reading it, just go and read it. And don't rely on the movie versions to tell you what actually happens. They're going to cut so much out. It is a very long book. They're bound to cut something out. And I think that the original story is more complex and more rewarding by the end. And more realistic. Like, the ending is not a Hollywood happily ever after type of story, which is very nice. I like the more realistic ending. At this point, I'm going to jump into a more spoilery discussion of characters and some things that happen. So if you don't want to know any more and you just want to go off and read this book for yourself, you can stop here, and I'm going to go talk about Dantes some more. First point I want to talk about is what Dantes is getting revenge for versus the extremity of the revenge that he wreaks on these four men. And not only on these men, but on their families and their children who are innocent in all this. Because what Dantes is taking revenge for is that these guys put him in prison for 14 years. That's horrible. He was unjustly convicted of a crime that he did not commit. He had 14 years of his life taken from him, and he suffered in prison. But he did get out. He's going to kill them, drive them to suicide, destroy not only them, but their families. I would say don't go into this thinking that Dantes is just taking revenge for what happened to him. He's also basically meting out punishment for all the bad things these guys have done in their life. But it still seems excessive to me that he is destroying their families. But their children are relatively innocent. And that is the point at which I started asking, is Dantes going too far? And there is a point where he starts asking this as well, but it's almost too late. Did Dantes genuinely not care that he would be harming innocent people on his way to punishing these men? Did he just not care about their innocent children at all? And it's like he either didn't have the foresight to see how poorly and badly his plots would affect them, or he just doesn't care, and at some point he doesn't care at all until somebody that he does care about gets involved. So, for example, Villefort's daughter Valentine is poisoned, and she's gonna die. And the Count of Monte Cristo only cares because Maximilian, the son of Monsieur Morel, whom he loved very much, is in love with Valentine. And when Maximilian comes running in and says, "Oh my God, my dearly beloved is going to die," that is when Dantes kind of says, "Oh, have I gone too far? I can't let this woman die. Maximilian loves her. It would hurt Maximilian." And this brings me to my whole thing about Edmond Dantes versus the Count of Monte Cristo. Edmond Dantes, at the beginning of the book, is naive, innocent, very quick to trust, to think well of other people. When he becomes the Count of Monte Cristo, it's like he's a completely different person. And I think I think there is a statement that Mercedes makes at some point that Edmond Dantes is dead. The man that she loved when she was young died in Chateau d'If. The Count of Monte Cristo is a different person. And I kind of agree with that. What bothered me more towards the end of the book was that it seemed like the Count of Monte Cristo was becoming the same kind of person that he is taking revenge on. And there is a quote from him that illustrates this, that he kind of realizes that himself. Good-natured, confiding, and forgiving as I had been, I became revengeful, cunning, and wicked, or rather immovable as fate. And you know, revengeful, cunning, and wicked is kind of the exact string of adjectives you'd apply to Caderousse, who's a murderer, to Danglars, who is kind of disgusting, to Fernand, to Villefort. He is no longer good-natured, confiding, and forgiving. He is immovable in his revenge, in his cunning, and in his wickedness. Now I understand why Mercedes definitely shouldn't have gotten back together with him. Mercedes was the character that I liked the most, that I empathized the most with. I liked the ending that she and her son Albert had had. At the end of The Count of Monte Cristo, I didn't think that Dantes deserved Mercedes anymore. She deserved so much better. So, like, all of this has been horrible for her. Her life has been upended once again. Her son was almost killed by her ex-lover. Her husband has committed suicide. She at least has the chance to live a normal life, not in complete poverty, and to love her son and be supported by her son and still have some family. That concludes my spoilery discussion of some of the stuff that happens in the book. Probably not really spoilery, but just in case, you know. That is it for me in The Count of Monte Cristo, and I will talk to you guys again in my next video. Bye!